main security office, and there were a few roaming the floors. As long as she was silent, nothing and no one would know she was there. Her gloved hands traced the wall as she crouched low, sticking to the shadows and avoiding the light from the city and other buildings. Kenzie passed his secretary's desk and ducked underneath so she could scan one last time. Celine had been the one to enchant all her gear, before she'd been cursed. The charms ensured no trace of her scent, her essence, or anything that could be used to identify and track her would be left anywhere. If it wasn't for her sister, Kenzie would be left with nothing but her human skills, which were nothing to sneeze at, but when you lived in the paranormal world and stuck your nose into shifter business, you needed witch magic. Everything looked perfect. Kenzie needed to get inside the West Coast Alpha's office and open the vault, but the office was tightly sealed. Her sister had given her a crystal, which had been enchanted to unlock any door, no matter the defenses. It wasn't exactly legal, but since there was no record of its existence, thankfully Celine liked to experiment. But it was only good for one lock. It was a bit of luck that Kenzie had tried to prove she wasn't a disappointment all those years ago. The things she could do with computers. Kenzie tucked the crystal back into the small pack on her waist and pulled out the mini tablet she'd brought. Kenzie slid out from under the desk, pressed one hand to the table, and vaulted herself over it effortlessly. Then she dropped to her knees and slid across the tile to the Alpha's door. She pressed her back up against it, keeping her breathing even as she pulled out the cable. So many weeks of recon, and she'd been able to learn the door took a key card and a thumbprint. She slipped the blank card and then tapped the program she'd created for just this purpose. A few minutes, and she'd be in. This is where the magic would come in. Kenzie pulled out the ashes from a picture that had the white tiger on it. Any moment. Her program unlocked the code, and she blew the ashes on the door. They settled onto the surface and glowed while they created the perfect thumbprint of the West Coast Pride Alpha, Samuel Erickson. Calling that favor in hadn't been great, since Celine wasn't able to do the spell for her without her powers. Fucking Peter and his disgusting little crush. Well, it came in handy when she'd needed it. The door unlocked, and Kenzie barely breathed as she pushed it open just enough to slip through. Then she waited. Lights from the city outside shone through the windows and made patterns on the ground. She leaned back into the shadows, knowing her red hair would be a dead giveaway. Kenzie cursed internally. She should have worn a head covering or something, but the risk it would fall off and leave a trail right back to her was too high. The headband Celine had magicked worked to keep her hair from falling out and leaving her DNA anywhere, but it didn't cover the bright red at all. No noises in the office, not even air whispered through the vents. There was nothing but the sound of computers whirring and humming. Kenzie put the tablet and cable away and grabbed the crystal. This was it. One more step, and she'd have the potion. She checked her escape route again. The window was still unlocked, and nothing and no one was in her way. She slid through the door, not touching anything, and stuck to the shadows on the walls. The lights from outside flickered with the ambience of the city. Most in the paranormal underground thought Samuel kept his vault behind his pride's portrait, but it was actually hidden behind a bookcase. The amount of digging she had to do to find the key had been ridiculous. And no, it was nothing obvious like the Jungle Book. Kenzie reached out and pulled down on Pride and Prejudice. Apparently, it was the White Tiger's favorite classic. Disgruntled employees always talked when they had too much to drink. The bookcase creaked open, and Kenzie winced at the sound.